Okay, so last time, I'm gonna go ahead here. The last time we did all this, what we determined was it was a plan, you know what, to kind of go over here and okay, in this region over here, um, over here, we shifted our coordinates. And so the centroid we got over here was this. And the central, I'm sorry, not the central. The second moment of the area was this. And I'm trying to make this so I can see it as I zoom out. And then, let's see if I can find, where was it? The other one. Oh, it was a whole kind of bunched in here. Okay, so this is the second moment of the area. Those are both the same thing. The only difference is I switch the integration sequence, and you find out you get the same thing. So let's just recap this in a little section over here. So if we had a triangle, and we want to find the second moment about this location, it ended up being base height third over 12, I believe. This is base. This is height. You know what? I'm going to move this over here. Height. So there's your triangle. Go over here, there's your base height to the third over 12. However, if you pick a location that's 1/3 up, h over 3, then you want to call this x prime, the I x prime is base times height to the third over 36. And that's what we determined. Now, if you look back at this table, that's exactly what he's got. Now, he designated this one. Okay, so actually, maybe I should use that other example. Let me use the other one because it had both of them. Give me a second. Let me see if I can find it. Gosh, it's so hard to see these. Oh, man. Wow, I'm having trouble seeing. Where is that one? I don't know. Here. Do I see? No, I don't. I don't see. Let me just try this one. Okay, this one looks like it has more pieces of information. Oops. Okay, yeah, so this one. Here's what's funny, is if you stare at this, okay, he's got all three. He's got a regular old triangle right there. He's got an isosceles, and then he's got a right triangle. Notice what you see about this. So here you have a coordinate system that's x and y. It's the ix is this bh over 36 right there. bh over 36 right there. Now notice what he does here is he takes the triangle and puts the origin of the axis at the vertice. He has bh to the third over 12. So it turns out if you go to the book, which I believe is right around here, there's a derivation of something called the parallel axis thing. Now, if you think about it and just stare at this for a minute, all he's doing here is he's doing this. He says, I would like to find Ix about here, about this line right here. So you take this line. Okay, I know my graphics are awful. I draw up to here, and then I draw up to here. This value is dy, and this value is y prime. So by nature, what I'm doing is I've got two coordinate systems. One that is shifted, hang on. One that is sitting down here with an origin here, and the other one with an origin that sits right at the centroid, and that's important. So here's the one that sits in the centroid. He tells me I want to find the ix about this line, not this line. And then he says, okay, so what's the definition of that? Well, ix is nothing more than the integral of y squared dA, but now I can replace this y squared. So if I run myself all the way to here and call this y, that is also dy plus y prime squared, which is what he puts in here. And he says, okay, I'm going to do this integral. So when you square that, of course, you get y squared from this squared, because this is nothing more than y prime plus dy times y prime plus dy. And so then you get two of these. Well, the dy doesn't change, so it can be moved out. And then you have this d squared. You know, the d squared can be moved out because it doesn't change. And what's funny is if you stare at this close enough, this term sits on its own, and this term sits on its own. This term has, if you stare at it and think about it, ignoring this term because it's just a constant, what you're finding is this term by itself is equal to y prime times area, because that's the definition of the centroid. Now, if I look at what is the centroid, what is the coordinate location of a centroid that is related to this coordinate system? Well, that's easy enough. That's like who's buried in Grant's tomb. What that says is this term is just equal to 0. So if I put a coordinate system where the origin of the coordinates are at the centroid, and then somebody says, what's the value at the centroid? That is the centroid. And so what he says is, if you look at that, that's just 0. So this term goes away. And then what happens is you have this term, which if you stare at that, that is nothing more than this term. So in other words, I bar, which that's what he's indicating as associated with the centroid, y prime is equal to the integral, x prime is equal to the integral of y prime squared, which is this, dA. So this term is in fact this term. And this term is nothing more than that term. So let's look at this in action then. We're just going to use this on our particular problem. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to say I bar xx about the centroid plus, let me go back to it. Oop, that's not where I wanted to go. Where did it go? Okay, so I got this term right here. Now, of course, I'm putting the extra x on there just because I do that. Okay, then the area times dy squared, and that is area times dy squared, and that's the centroid of a new, that is the second moment of the area of a new location. So before we go any further, we should recognize that this is a special connotation. That is the second moment of area about its centroid. Whatever the thing is, just so happens this is a triangle. It doesn't have to be a triangle, whatever it happens to be. So we know this. So I take that, I stick in here, b h to the third over 36 plus, what's the area of the triangle? bh over 2. That's the area of the triangle. And what is the dy that I moved? I moved h over 3. Okay, so in other words, The difference between here and here is h over 3. It's where I moved this new line to accompany that. Okay, so, and I'm supposed to square this. So I don't know whether to put the square like this. I don't know. So if I look at this thing, okay, so 9 and it times a 2 is 18. BH to the third, and if I don't make a mistake here, BH to the third over 36, but I can put a 2 and a 2 here. I think 2 times 18 is 36, isn't it? And so then I get a 1. Oh, why am I typing? So I basically, okay, so here, let me do it this way. BH to the third, 1 plus 2. The 1 came from here, the 2 came from here, and this is all over 36, which is nothing more than 3. BH to the third over 36 is nothing more than BH to the third over 12, which in fact is that. So the parallel axis theorem, what does it do? Here's what it does. Got some object. You locate its centroid. You have some value of I, we'll call this is x, I'll just call it x prime, x prime. So I have this value, some sort of number or equation. And then I decide to move it around here to say some distance dy away, and I want to find its second moment area about that. So if I want to find that, I take the one that is about the centroid, which is this number, whatever, and I add the area of this whole thing, and the distance dy moves squared, and that's it. That is actually what that term is. And so it's just that simple. And so that's the power of this as compared to what I did before, okay? So if you look back at the lecture and what I did before did seem a bit crazy. So the first thing I did is I went to that maximum and I did this integration, and I got that. Then I said, hey, what happens if I want to find about x prime, not about xx here? Well, I started realizing, okay, I got to shift the coordinates. So I shifted it. I went in, I had to shift this, and I had to shift this because I had a new coordinate system. So I shifted all those, did an integration, and I said, okay, that is about the centroid. That is a special term, which is this. Now, if you go to most tables, you'll find, okay, now, and most places will signify this. So if you look at, like, so this triangle right here, the IX is based on type third over 12. Okay, that is not about the centroid. The centroid isn't this line right down here. But the centroid is right here. So he's basically placed the centroid here. And then he says, okay, origin of axis at the centroid. So then he does get this. So most books will say I bar x right here. And for that matter, they'll say I bar y here for a triangle like that. And that's fine. But then, if you want to translate this to this one, you got to use the parallel axis thing. So my point is, if you look at these, origin at the axis of the centroid, origin of axis at vertex, it's different. Origin of axis at centroid, origin of axis at centroid, origin of axis at vertex. Most of the time, they will give you the thing at the centroid. So here, origin of axis at centroid, origin of axis at the corner. So, you know, So I don't know if that makes sense, but let's now jump to something called composite sections. And I have several really good videos on this. So I'll send this out, and it's already embedded in the Blackboard site, but I'll add that to it. And the reason I'm jumping there right now is that this parallel axis theorem becomes really important in composite sections. This is where, you know, you're kind of reaching the point of a more realistic situation. Here's what I mean. Let's say you had a L thing, and you're going to use this, or let's say you want to have an I-beam. So you take two pieces of wood and you put a center section right here. Now, what you're going to find out later, this is not for this course, but you're going to find out in mechanics of materials, the stress at any layer here, a vertical layer being Y, is equal to M, and I'm almost apt to put C, but I'll put Y over I. That's what we're finding. So what you find out is the larger you can make I, the smaller the stress will be at the outside layer. Here's what I mean. So if somebody came in and wanted to make a beam like this, and somebody else came in and wanted to make a beam like this, first of all, I tried to move it up there. First of all, this one will flex less. This one will flex a lot. But also the stresses could possibly, depending on a couple of circumstances, stresses could be higher here than here. So plays a role. The I term plays a role both in the flex and the stress here. So this I term is very important going forward for you. So let's deal with this. Let's just say it's 1 foot, and instead of using inches, I'm just going to say it's 0.1 foot. And hang on, it's 0.1 foot here. It's 1 foot here. And the same dimensions here, 1 foot, and it's 0.1 foot. So you got a beam that sits here like that. First of all, I'm going to go through this process of finding the centroid. Now, this is something that's not going to surprise you. But what I'm going to be looking for is I'm only going to be looking for the centroid in the Y. I don't care about the X right now. So how do we go about this? There's a section called composite, and maybe the best thing to do is just go ahead and do a problem. So we saw Y bar area is equal to the integral of Y bar dA. Now, integration can be thought of as looking like a summation. Okay, so you could look at this way. Now, what I'm going to do right off is I'm just going to identify 3 composite sections, 1, 2, and 3. And this is probably the simplest case you could come across. So what I'll do is I'll create a table called A. I'll list composite section 1, 2, and then 3. So it's almost like I'm making an Excel table. And this table is going to grow out to the right because there's going to be a lot of entries. So I'm interested in Y bar of that composite section. First thing is I've made these all the same size. So the area of 1 is equal to area 2 is equal to area 3. They're all the same. They're 1 foot by 0.1, or their area is 0.1. So it just so happens, they don't have to be, but the area is all 0.1. And this is in feet squared. I don't need to put the units. Usually you don't put the units there. but that's okay. Now what I'm going to do is I need a coordinate system. I need an origin, and so this is going to be my origin, the bottom of this section. Where is the centroid of each? The centroid of this one is right here. Centroid of this one's right here. Centroid of that one's right here. So this height is going to be 0.05. Why? Because the width is 0.01. This one is going to be, well, first it's going to be a half a foot plus the 0.1. So it's going to be 0.5 plus 0.1 or 0.6. And the last thing is from the origin all the way to the top. Well, that's going to be 1 foot here. So 1 foot here, 0.1, and then 0.05. That's going to be 1 plus 0.1, which is this one, plus 0.05, or 1.15. Now, what I'm going to do is make sure I list these the right way. The y bar of the first one, 0.05. So this is the distance of 1, and it's that. Now the distance of the second one, the centroid there, is 0.6. That's the second one. So that should be 0.6. The distance to the third one, okay, the top one, here's the centroid. It's 1.1, and that's for this, so it should be 1.15, sorry, 1.15. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply these two. Oh, geez. I guess I'll break out mine. These shouldn't be too hard to do, so I think I could do them on my calculator. 0.1 times 0.05, 0.005. This would be A times the y bar. Okay, 0.6 times 0.1, 0.06, 1.15 times 0.1 should be 0.115. Now, if I sum these, I get 0.3. In other words, this plus this plus this is equal to 0.3. Now, if I sum these, I get this one plus this one plus this one is equal to something there. Okay, 0.06 plus 0.005. I get 0.18. So now, if I want to know y bar of the composite, it's going to be the sum of a y bar over the whole area, or 0.18 divided by 0.3, or 0.6. Does that seem right? Well, actually, if you stack an I-beam and it's symmetrical about this spot, its centroid will be located right here. And so I've got the answer I thought I should get. So this is not, so, but what I've done is I've shown you mathematically how to do it, but you probably knew when you started that the centroid is going to be where this is, because that's the same value and distance that this is. So this is not abnormal. Now comes a new term. Okay, so I want to do something interesting here. I want to do I bar XX for each one of these. And this is where it becomes different. Now what I'm going to do, okay, it turns out if I have a square, I'm going to do this, and I have any sort of, not square, but rectangle, has a base, height, and I'm looking at the centroid, the I bar, there's going to be base times height to the third over 12. Now, okay, XX. So let me go and verify that with these terms that you can see here. Here it is. Okay, the origin of the axis at the centroid. So here you go, you're right here. And the IX is base times height to the third over 12. Guess what? IY is height times base of the third over 12. So if you just turn it 90 degrees, you know, the base and height interchange. And so that is actually the I about the centroid. Now, you could do this, and I haven't seen people do this before, but you could put a base and a height here. And I'll do that, just, that's not what you generally see. So let me put the base here. The base of 1 is 1. The height is 0.1. 2, it's reverse, 0.1 and 1. And 3 is 1 and 0.1. So if I want to do that, I bar xx, that's just going to be base times height to the third over 12. And you're going to have to give me a minute to do that. Okay, base 1 times 0.1. Okay, 0.1 times 0.1 times 0.1 divided by 12. Oh, gosh. Okay. 0.000008 3, 3, 3, 3. And I don't know how many of these I want to do. Guess what? This is the same as that. So that should be the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 8, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. This other one's different. And so it's higher, more vertical. So the H is going to be 1. So you're going to get it 0.1 divided by 12, or you're going to get 0.008333333. But now I'm going to do something different. What I'm going to do is, of course, I don't need the area because I already have the area right here. So if you're doing an Excel spreadsheet, I don't need that. What I need to do is the distance in Y that I'm going to move. Okay, now this is really something you should stare at very, very closely. Pay close attention to this, because then I'm going to square it and multiply times area in a minute. So what I'm saying is, if you look at this, okay, and I have actually found the I about these particular locations. But what I want to do is I want to move this one to here, and I want to move this one to here. What is the distance I move? Well, here it's 0.6, and here it's the same thing, 0.6. So the distance I'm moving each of these is 0.6. The distance I'm moving that one is 0. Why? Because the centroid of this square right here is in fact the eventual centroid of the whole object. Now that you've identified that, you have identified where you're moving from the centroid to another location. So the next thing you do is you do this. Okay, let me go back to another color. Okay, so you do area dy squared. So now you take this column and multiply times that one squared and put right there. And luckily, everything has an area of 0.1. So the first, well, this entry is going to be 0 because the dy here is just 0. So that's gone. So the area on all these is 0.1. So you get 0.06 and 0.06. So now what do you do? Well, you do this. I'm making it wider because the term on top is wider. So I say I bar xx plus area dy squared. So I take this column, add it to this one, and put them right there. This you'll have to give me a minute to do. So of course this one's easy, 0.008333333. Okay, this is a little bit different. I can take this number, add it to that number, and put right here. So did I really? I sure did. I'm glad you caught me there. It should be 36, right? That's great. Yeah, thank you. But didn't affect this yet. It did affect those. But now I got to take the 0.036, add it to this thing, and put it right there. Okay, 0.12348. And how many times do I hit 3? It won't let me hit it more than that, so that's funny. 0.036. 0.83333. Same thing here. And then what do? I just add those things up. 0.008. And so what I get when I add them all up, 0.805. And I threw away those last digits, which actually, because you got a 333, they go away. So that is in fact the eye about the centroid of the composite. Is just that. Now, if you're in mechanics and materials, what you do next is somebody tells you you have a beam and somebody put a moment on it. So you put a moment, oops, that's supposed to be M. Moment, I'm just making stuff up, so 1,000, foot-pounds on it. So the beam sort of tilts and twists down like that. What it's doing inside of that beam, and you'll see more of this when you get in there. So if you take a beam and do that, what happens is, internal into that, you see a stress diagram that looks like this. So it's like a linear variation of stress. If you took what's called the neutral axis and ran up and down and integrated that, you would find that would offset that moment. So it turns out, what is this stress? Sigma is equal to M. Now, say sometimes you'll see C written here, but actually, what you really want, My or MC over I or My over I, where that I in this particular case is 0.0805, and say your moment's 1,000. Well, now let's say that beam was, how tall was it to the top and bottom? Okay, so if I look at the total extent from here to the very top, what am I looking at? That's 0.5, that's 0.5. You know what? Yeah, 0.6. Okay, never mind. 0.6. So here, it becomes 0.6, and you can figure out the stress at that top or the bottom layer. That's really should be left. I shouldn't even be saying that. That's illegal for me to say that. That's mechanics and materials. So it also turns out that the bending, if you look at the equation of like a beam that is doing like that, and this is an awful drawing, and you want to know how far it deflected, then hang on, you can get something like this. Okay, is the beam equation. So this would be some force X as a function. So this is the force that's out there making it bend. It turns out that's the beam equation. And guess what? There's I sitting right in there. E is modulus of elasticity, which actually should have covered in materials. And so that I plays a role here, and it plays a role here. So that I is very, very important. Being able to calculate it, extremely important. Being able to know that if you can pick up that I higher and higher, eventually the beam becomes so stiff that, you could park a Mack truck on it and the beam's not going to deflect that much. You do have to worry about another part, and that's stability. Like if you made a beam like this, that something like that, there is a chance, that's supposed to be a straight line. There is a chance it would become unstable and warp over on its side. And that is a design consideration. But if you took two beams, oh God, this is a terrible drawing, and did a cross member like that, okay, so you did something, oh God, this looks horrible. Take two I-beams and put a supporting member here and that, so this thing doesn't warp over on its side like that, then you can make a pretty reasonable structure that can hold a lot of weight. If you go out and build houses, you'll see you can buy these manufactured beams that what you find out is they're this long beam, and in the span here usually is oriented strand board, and up here is you got this beam running down here. In any case, if you look in on the side of these as they're building the house, you'll see people do like this. You'll see this beam sitting here, and then it's neighbor beam right here, right? And then what people will do sometimes is they'll get a 1x and they'll take the 1x. I've seen them do this where they put them like this, and I've also seen them do like this where they'll kind of somehow try to go like that. You know, just a 1x material that doesn't go the span, it just goes a little bit all the way down. And then that way it adds a little stability so those beams don't fall over on their side. Because some of these beams that you can buy like that are kind of tall and thin. They'll flop over pretty easy. Okay, so let me check. I mean, if y'all want to go down there and see if you can get some food, y'all want to go down there and see if you can get some food now? I mean, I don't know what's going on.
It's a crawfish bowl.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Who's doing it?
The fishing thing.
Oh, so anybody can go eat there.
Yeah.
Oh, so do y'all want to go down there and get some crawfish? I mean, might as well, because if you don't go now, the half this building's going to empty in a few minutes, and you won't get any. Unless they have a bucket load, but I don't see a lot. So I think what I'm going to do is call it quits and let you guys go get crawfish, if y'all are okay with that. Okay, so on the scores I sent out, I didn't mean to panic anybody or anything, but I just wanted, there were like 3 or 4 people in each class that seemed like they were in a destitute mode. Okay, the other thing is, and I did this in dynamics and had somebody here, and we were kind of working through it. You can change the grades or go do something. It may take a couple hours for it to move over the blackboard. But when I post the grades, I'm not going to use the Blackboard one. I'm going to go over and use the Pearson one, because the Pearson one is up to the minute. So, like if you did it, your homework, and you're like left, and I did it off the Blackboard, and it's a couple hours later, and it hadn't moved across, then I don't get that assignment. But he sat right here, and we played with one. He submitted it. It was like instantaneous. The Pearson grade book is instantaneous. So that's where I'm going to get the scores up to produce the grades. So as you go through this, go ahead and keep doing it, because no matter where you're at, this is not an average that I gave you. It's the running total. So you do more work and your score goes up. And so it's not like, oh crap, I made the same score. It's different. This is different than other classes where you make a 70, 70, 70, 70, you get a 70. No, it's building up each time. So just keep going doing it. I'm pretty sure that the 3 people I'm talking about are probably not any of you guys. But there's some people that, one person last he logged in was January or something. So I hadn't seen him, he hadn't done anything. So I felt the obligation to send this out. So if you see that low grade, don't get panicked, but do get panicked enough to go and complete the work. But don't get panicked like you would in another class that structures the scores a little bit different. So if you're the person, and I doubt this is the case, if any of you guys are the person that hadn't done anything, yeah, it's time to panic because you got a lot to do. So, but today's the drop day. So anyway,